East with the troops. So he'll be missed. And you're right, we are losing, most of our primary witnesses now are passed on for the Roswell event.
Now, for those who want to check our archives, we had Dr. Marcel on 2 episodes of the Paracast, August 1st, 2006, our first year on the air, and November 16th, 2008. Now, an important thing we should also mention here about Dr. Marcel is the fact that he suffered from his service in Iraq. According to Kevin Randall, who did a eulogy for him at his blog, A Different Perspective, Jesse Marcel suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder. And it's so sad that people who go there, go overseas to defend our country, and they come back and they're really, really screwed up. This very much impacted his medical career as a result of this. I would check out Kevin's blog. It's called A Different Perspective, kevinrandall.blogspot.com, or if you go to theparacast.com, just about everywhere we mention Kevin Randall as a guest on the show, you'll have a link to his articles. So I would recommend that. But I think part of it here is that you have to wonder, when it comes to a case like Roswell, will we ever get to the bottom of it? I mean, we see the history passing before our eyes, and there was kind of a gruesome joke some people mentioned, we're chasing the Undertaker. Now, Dr. Marcel saw the wreckage of Roswell. I gather he touched it also, as I recall, right?
Yeah.
So we have that description, a very compelling description of somebody who was 11 years old at the time this happened. And we have to assume any adults in the room, if they're still alive, would be in their 80s and 90s. So where do we go from here? Is there any hope of learning anything more about Roswell, unless the authorities have some kind of secret evidence that they're not letting us know about?
All right, I'm not going to hold my breath, Gene.
And we still have the argument, was Roswell a test aircraft? Was it a balloon? I mean, we can go into all the stories of why it can't be a balloon, why it can't be a mogul balloon, anything like that. But so many years distant from the event, and the fact also that after the Roswell story came out in 1947, it lay dormant for the next 30 years or so until William Moore, Stan Friedman, and Charles Berlitz started doing research on a book about Roswell, which came out in 1980. So in 30 years, you still have to think about the cultural contamination. Now, when you're doing your investigation into cattle mutilations and other paranormal events, Christopher, as a field investigator, how do you consider doing research of events that are so far off in the past?
Well, yeah, that's a good question, Gene. It's quality of sources. To give you an example, for many years I heard rumors of a wave of mutilation cases that occurred in England in the early 1600s in the 15th century, and it took a lot of digging, but I finally did find this particular citation from the court records of James I. And I had always prefaced my comments about this prior to finding this documentation that this was a rumor that I had heard, but I had not been able to confirm it and be able to quote chapter and verse where this rumor originated and whether it was legit. And I finally did find it, and the actual documentation train was very interesting and extremely credible. So it's really the credibility of the sources and being able to confirm that source in some manner. That's the key thing for me. Again, data is data, and rumors and stories and urban legends are just that. So that's kind of where I sort of draw the line. If I can get documentation, if I can cite it, the source material, and then get confirmation of that, then I'll run with it.
I think this came into play when we had our guest last week, Chad Lewis, talking about the Van Meter episode,
right,
about a bat-like creature, a possible Iowa Mothman, and once again looking into old documentation to see what happened. In his case, he had access to newspaper clippings quoting the movers and shakers of that community, so it certainly had credibility. We don't know really what happened, but at least we have something where there is source material, And as I keep arguing here, that goes back to this other case in the UFO field, Aztec, where you don't have the documentation preceding this book. Now, a little bit later on, we're going to be talking to Walter Bosley. He's a former counterintelligence agent, and he can prove it, by the way. He's actually sent us more credentials than you could wish for. And you have to contrast that with people who claim to have experiences or educational or a military background and have no evidence. He provided the evidence.
Boy, did he.
Oh, we got his DD-214. The DD-214 is, of course, your military certificate when you're discharged. You have that paper to prove who and what you were. And you'd be surprised how many people claim that experience, and when you say DD-214, they go, what? I'll get back to you 5 years later. Now, Walter has 2 ebooks out there called Empire of the Wheel, and it starts with a strange, rather gruesome story of questionable deaths going back almost 100 years. Once again, doing research of an event that happened a long, long time ago, trying to unearth the facts, trying to come up with a credible narrative as to what might have happened. This is going to be a fascinating session. And we're talking about here a guy who's been in the FBI, been in military counterintelligence. He's a private investigator. He knows his stuff about unearthing facts, and you're going to hear some really fascinating stuff. So we've got Walter Bosley joining Gene and Chris. You're in
the Paracast.
Attack of the Rockoids has been well received by critics and readers alike. It's a thrill-a-minute story you'll never forget. A former U.S. military intelligence officer is haunted by intense dreams about a beautiful woman pleading for his help after a terrible battle in outer space. But the dreams turn out to be true and thrust him into a telepathic love affair with a woman whose faraway planet is intent on destroying the Earth. And now the gripping tale continues in The Coming of the Protectors. It's the second book of the Rockoids trilogy, a galaxy-spanning adventure that pits our hapless heroes against powerful, fanatical enemies that threaten the lives of freedom-loving beings everywhere. Attack of the Rockoids and The Coming of the Protectors. Classic science fiction at its best, available now. For more details, visit rockoids.com. That's ROCKOIDS.com.
Gold isn't for you? Ted Anderson, president of Midas Resources, one of the world's premier gold and precious metal investing firms. I get it. You wouldn't buy gold if you believed that the government is doing a great job, that the Fed will stop handing out trillions of dollars like bailout candy, that Social Security would be there for you. That's not what's happening. You might even pass on gold if the stimulus package wouldn't fuel inflation, or that the dollar wouldn't lose value, or that your retirement would be secure. If all looks rosy to you, then now is not the time to buy gold. For the realists, there have never been more sobering reasons to diversify with gold. Since 2001, the U.S. dollar index has tanked 30% while gold has risen 300%. Right now, savvy investors are adding gold to their portfolios. You should too. Find out what they know. Call us and I'll send you 10 reasons why gold will do very well, free. 800-686-2237. 800-686-2237. That's 800-686-2237.
What's safer and cheaper than prescription drugs?
Glad you asked. The answer is Renovation Teas. Herbal remedies are much safer and much cheaper than prescription drugs. Taste great, and most importantly, herbal teas are effective and non-addictive. Renovation Tea is especially unique, and here's why. We spent years researching herbs and their beneficial properties. Renovation Teas uses only 100% organic, fair trade herbs. Our teas are blended towards specific ailments and health conditions, such as diabetes, blood pressure, anxiety, libido, detox, and much more. All Renovation Teas are formulated and hand-filled in Arkansas. Take care of yourself naturally, the way Mother Nature intended. Order Renovation Teas at renovationtea.com or call 870-784-3121. That's 870-784-3121. Renovation Teas. Renovate your health one bag at a time.
Summertime is sale time at Herbal Healer Academy. Current customers know this is the time to save big and stock up at herbalhealer.com. New customers, welcome to the web's best place to save on vitamins, minerals, and more. Right now, Herbal Healer's summer specials include our 500 parts per million colloidal silver, all sizes on sale. CoQ10 with Hawthorne, Colon Enhancer, Sea Cucumber, Super Fem and Super Male Plex, plus glucosamine chondroitin, our best-selling liquid CalMag Vitamin V, and our colloidal minerals, all on sale for summer at herbalhealer.com. And Herbal Healer also offers certificate correspondence courses in natural medicine. Enjoy same-day shipping and free online newsletter. Log on to our nation's leader in supplying quality natural medicine and education since 1988. Herbal Healer Academy at herbalhealer.com.
We'd like to hear from you. If you have a comment or question about the Paracast, send it to news@theparacast.com. That's news@theparacast.com. And don't forget to visit our famous Paracast community forums at forum.theparacast.com.
Yes, he worked for the FBI. Yes, he's a former counterintelligence agent. His name was Walter Bosley. He's been on the Paracast several times before. But this time we're going to sharply focus not on UFOs and disinformation and all that NSA stuff that's going on, but on his two books, Empire of the Wheel, the original, and the sequel, Empire of the Wheel 2. But before we go to that, Walter Bosley, first, welcome back to the Paracast.
Thanks for having me, Chris and Gene. I appreciate it.
Now, unfortunately, we found in this field, as you know, you got into this discussion in our forums at forum.theparacast.com, where people legitimately ask for your credentials, your background. And let me preface this by the fact that a couple of years back, we discovered that Phil Imbrogno, who was pretty well known in the UFO field, who had written a book with Dr. J. Allen Hynek, his educational credentials were fake, his military background was fake, and now there's this article at Kevin Randall's Different Perspective about a guy who really did have military service, did receive lots of accolades in a long career, named Richard French, yet his current claim, half his credentials were faked, his educational credentials were faked. He claims to have been one of the authors of Project Blue Book documents, and we can't verify that either. So I guess we're seeing here, Walter, that even people who have somewhat of a background aren't afraid to embellish a little bit.
Unfortunately, that is the case. That's why, for one thing, investigative agencies have things like internal affairs departments, because, unfortunately, there are people who, to some degree, are involved, our credentials are legit, but they seem to want to cross a line. And in that, I'm not familiar personally with the Richard French case, but from what you've just said here, it sounds like a guy who, wanted to be involved with something now that he feels is exciting and interesting, and, has crossed a line just to buy some attention, so to speak. It's
yeah, he was actually, Walter, just for your information, he was included in the list of witnesses at the recent Citizens Hearing on Disclosure faux hearings in D.C. He actually contacted me a number of years ago, and really he bugged me to sit and talk with him, and I just always had a sense that I never did follow up on it, and I just felt that some of his claims, the few of them that I was aware of, just seemed so over the top that I just didn't waste my time with it. And I'm not surprised to hear that the veracity of his background and some of his statements are being questioned by someone like Kevin. It doesn't surprise me in the least.
Yeah, well, I try to be clear with people on what I was and what I was not. Sometimes people, when I was doing my work where I was out of the country a lot in counterterrorism, friends and associates, acquaintances would kind of describe what I would do, and sometimes they would get it wrong. They would, tell somebody, I was more in the lines of some type of commando type guy, and I would correct them and say, no, I didn't do that type of work. I was more kind of in the spook field and the threat assessment field, that kind of thing, never a commando. So I try to be really sensitive to the descriptions and make sure that I'm being as accurate and correct as I can possibly be.
Okay, now, I guess the key here is because of what you've done, and we'll ask you to very briefly just mention it. We're not going to extend a long discussion on it. Are you constrained in any way from telling us the things you did?
Well, yes, I'm constrained in the details of operations. I'm constrained in telling, like certain people, or identifying, certain people who I might have worked with operationally. But in a general sense, as I've stated before, I can state the fact that I worked in counterespionage operations. That in itself is not classified. The fact that the U.S. government conducts double agent operations, this is no secret. This kind of thing, has been going on since World War II and before. So,
well, sources and methods are where you start getting into a little sensitive areas.
Yeah, it's actually mostly because, in all honesty, a lot of the sources or the methods anyway, they're kind of out there. These things surprisingly don't really change that much, except where the technological stuff is concerned. It's when you get into human sources and when you get into identifying certain specific people associated with certain specific places and targets, then I could get in big trouble, because that's revealing operational things that I'm not at liberty to discuss.
Now, when we look at things like on TV, we have a TV show called Covert Affairs on the USA Network, which you're probably familiar with, produced by one of the producers of the Bourne movies. So it has some pretty good action, and they've got this lead actress, woman in her early 30s, who plays a young CIA agent who goes around the world and gets into all sorts of trouble. But you also have interplays between the office. You have the office politics. You have people getting involved with one another, people trying to discredit one another, people trying to kill one another. And how exaggerated is something like that from the real world of intelligence?
Well, for most of my experience over roughly 18 years, I would have said it's greatly exaggerated. However, I did work with one outfit, which astonishingly, that wouldn't be exaggerated. I mean, this one unit had the worst management I'd ever encountered. It had a clique that was powerful because they were in tight with the bad manager, and the clique's members, would make it their little hobby to destroy people they didn't like personally. Let's see. There was a lot of getting involved with each other, you might say. It was quite a toxic soap opera in that one unit. So I have experienced some of the melodrama, that can happen. Now, all throughout my career, just like anyone who's worked for Uncle Sam will tell you, you encounter incompetent management, you encounter, office politics. But fortunately, I can say that most of my career was spent in the operational arena. So, like when I was with the FBI, I worked in what they call off-site locations, and our daily focus were operations. And when I was in OSI, I spent, about half my time working in an office, detached from the main office, that kind of thing. So I was fortunate. Except for that one unit, I really didn't encounter a lot of that stuff like you see on TV shows. And as you could guess, they take creative license to make it more interesting to watch.
Of course, because it has to be resolved in 43 and a half minutes, plus the commercials. Exactly. Otherwise, listen, that's how it goes. But, the office politics, it doesn't just apply to intelligence or police agents. It's everywhere. We've got Walter Bosley, and it sounds like he's been everywhere. With Gene and Chris, you're in
the Paracast.
The GCN Radio Network, providing the world with hard-hitting talk radio. GCN. Great talk radio starts here.
If you want to get your website online and you need reliable service, first-class service at the lowest possible price, there's only one place to go. Well, DreamHost has a special promotion with our show where they'll offer you unlimited disk space, unlimited bandwidth, one-click web apps such as WordPress, 24/7 support. You can save over $55. You want to know how? Go to dreamhost.com/radio, dreamhost.com/radio. Whether it's personal mail, whether it's business email, you want reliable, dependable delivery, freedom from spam, freedom from viruses. Well, Polaris Mail offers professional email hosting services for your personal or small business use. Each account uses 25 gigabytes of storage, an easy-to-use webmail interface, and full mobile sync. Sign up today for a 30-day free trial at polarismail.com, polarismail.com.
There is only one detox product that stands out above the rest. Micro Plant Powder. And it's available only at hempusa.org. Micro Plant Powder does wonders by removing toxins from the body. Detoxification is a vital process that's extremely important for restoring your health. Micro Plant Powder is available in 8 different formulations, and we can help you choose the one that's perfect for your lifestyle. Micro Plant Powder is 100% chemical-free, non-GMO, anti-inflammatory, gluten-free, and packaged by hand in BPA-free containers. HempUSA.org wants you to be healthy, and Micro Plant Powder is one of the best ways we know to detoxify your body from head to toe, all for about $10 a month. Take back your life and enjoy living again with Micro Plant Powder. Call 888-910-4367. That's 888-910-4367. Micro Plant Powder. Available only at hempusa.org.
There's a huge and hushed up conspiracy going on that's about to turn your lives upside down in the coming few months. Unbelievably, the media are keeping quiet about this. I'm sure they know it, but they probably know that revealing it on TV will generate mass hysteria and chaos. But I believe you should be informed about it, because when the sinister agenda is finally accomplished and everything unravels, only those who know this secret info will survive and thrive. Go to 123conspiracy.com right now to see the truth. The video at 123conspiracy.com reveals the real secret reason why Obama is after your guns and ammo. And it's not just in response to mass murders and preparing for war. It's something much darker. Go watch the video now at 123conspiracy.com before they shut it down. Again, that's 123conspiracy.com.
Weakened by GMOs, stressed out about money, and blasted by the electric environment. Hi, I'm Pastor Jenny, and that was the state I was in back in 2010. Then I learned about RNA drops. I learned that 97% of my DNA that scientists have called junk is actually packed with millions of gene switches that play a critical role in controlling how my cells, organs, and other tissues behave. I learned I don't have to put up with disease, decay, or decline like I'd been conditioned to believe. I began taking RNA drops, a 100% natural formula designed to turn on those switches and provide me with amazing health and joy. Learn more about RNA drops and order a free sample today. Visit rnafreesample.com. That's rnafreesample.com, or call toll-free 888-577-3703. Pay only shipping and handling for a free 30-day supply of RNA drops. Get the information you need and the health you want at rnafreesample.com.
Hi, this is Don Ecker, and you are tuned into the Paracast. Let me tell you what, you're going to hear stuff here that you probably won't hear anywhere else. Hear that, George Snorri?
Walter Bosley joins us, former counterintelligence agent. And can we assume, Walter Bosley, that you're not doing that now? You're totally retired from that crazy life, and you're just a regular private citizen like the rest of us.
Yes, you can safely and honestly assume that. It would be nice to be otherwise, because I'd be getting a nice fat paycheck. But I'm out here like the rest of you guys, just trying to scrape by on a private investigator's license, which I do have. I am a private investigator. And also, doing my research and doing films, a little bit. So I've been out of that since out of my former profession since about 2006. For a couple of years there, I did background investigations for the government under contract, but haven't done that since 2008.
All right, let's talk about these two books, Empire of the Wheel. The first one's called Empire of the Wheel, Espionage, the Occult, and Murder in Southern California. And the second one, the sequel, is called Friends from Sonora. And I think one of the issues that Chris and I raised before we got you on is trying to put together the pieces of something that happened so long ago. We're talking about something here that goes back to what, 1915?
Yeah, 98 years ago.
I remember it well, my friend.
And talk about trying to put together the pieces. I mean, you're absolutely right there. It is difficult. You run into, for instance, the police department here told me that their records were destroyed. They no longer exist. When I did my particular query there, it's a chore to dig it out. You wouldn't think so, because a lot of historical record going farther back does exist on the one hand with some things, but in this particular case, I really had the local newspaper articles, and a little bit of archived records, genealogical records, coroner records, which are scant. It really comes down to an analysis of something's going on here. What the heck exactly is it?
But at least we didn't have cable TV talking heads. I mean, if you try to parse together what's happened with today's news, you will hear two diametrically opposed versions of the same story, not related to one another. And today, I think we have so much information, there's no way to find out what's really going on. So maybe you were lucky because mass communications wasn't quite what it was then.
Right. Well, you have a good point there. The problem that I did run into was the disconnect between all the news reports, and you can read 3 news reports on the same day of the same event, and each one has the details and the facts a little different, a little off in some cases. Now, they finally started to get it right, so to speak, or be all on the same page. But there was a period of time when I was researching one aspect of this whole thing, in which a chunk of news reports indicated that the central victim of the 7 that are discussed in the first book was actually alive. At least the woman they identified her to be was alive, and she walked into the police department and said, "Oh, no, I'm alive." But then as you dig further, you find out, no, that was not the case, and all of that is kind of like a red herring, that indeed the mystery woman, so to speak, really was a mystery woman.
All right, let's talk about the mystery. What first attracted you to this story? I mean, just waking up one day and saying, hey, this is a strange thing that happened 98 years ago and was certainly less than that when you started. Why?
Well, I was interested in paranormal stories, specifically any ghost stories that were linked to what we call colloquially the ley lines, which I've since started calling telluric current, basically the energy grid, on the planet that I'm sure a lot of your listeners are already familiar with the basic concept of. And I was looking for any ghost stories in this area linked to the energy grid, identified to me by author and researcher Seshari.
Before we go on, listeners may not know what we're talking about here, so we really have to kind of back up a little bit. Explain the ley lines, the energy sources, and what significance this has, and then we can go into more of this case.
Okay. Colloquially, familiarly, sorry, I'm stumbling over my tongue. It's early for me. People are familiar with the term ley lines. That's actually not accurate. A ley line is technically something different. So I like to say, and Rick Spence and I, my co-author on the first book and on the upcoming third book, we like to say telluric current. Telluric current is something that it's a scientific fact. It's an extreme low frequency electromagnetic energy that actually runs through the Earth. Telegraphy, the old telegraph with the Morse code from the 1800s, telegraphy from the 1850s on has tapped into telluric current. Tesla, for instance, Nikola Tesla would tap into telluric current. But this telluric current is, in my opinion and others' opinion, the energy we're talking about when people talk about this planetary grid of energy that is popular in paranormal and alternative science circles. But the telluric current has a basis in scientific fact. It's a real thing. So when you hear me refer to, if I throw out the term ley lines in the discussion, I mostly am going to use telluric current, but if I throw out ley lines, that's my application of it. It's the energy that runs through the very terrain. It helped form the terrain when the planet was forming, and then it continues to run through the planet. So that's my best thumbnail description. I'm not a scientist, of course.
Okay, so there's the implication here that maybe these particular areas, they attract more unusual events. I mean, we're almost getting to what they call portal areas, but that would seem to be something separate.
Well, no, your portals, your vortices, these things, yes, would be linked to this grid. I agree with that particular opinion that many others share. And so I was looking for ghost stories, or other paranormal manifestations reported that might be linked to this energy grid. And I happened to find one. And this story was, it was really posted online by a woman who lives locally, who's a librarian, a woman named Ann Walker. And she's one of the folks who had posted on this website called Find a Grave. I don't know if you've ever seen it or heard of it, but it's a fascinating website, particularly if you're into genealogical research. And she had posted a comment about a woman named Cora Stanton. And essentially, she claimed that Cora Stanton haunted a mall, a shopping mall, that I subsequently learned was built over the place where this Cora Stanton woman had died. So I thought, well, that's interesting. I got to talk to, I got to dig into this more because, my first conversations online with Ann, were intriguing enough. So I met with her and she gave me, the details as she knew them. She said, hey, go look at the news stories. This woman, it was in 1915. There was all this murky mystery surrounding her death. There's something funny going on there. So I went to the California room of the local San Bernardino Public Library. That's their historical archive room. And I started looking at these newspaper articles about the woman known as Cora Stanton. And I very quickly discovered that there were 6 other people who died under very curious circumstances, within days or weeks of Cora Stanton, one of them a few months, but, suddenly it was just kind of boom, right there in my lap that, there was something funny going on here.
Walter Bosley joining Gene and Chris. More to come. You're in
the Paracast.
America's #1 source for independent talk radio for over a decade. We are the GCN Radio Network.
Is there a secret UFO agenda? Do strange creatures from the darkest corners of the mind roam the Earth? Is there evidence for mind control, time travel, or devious government conspiracies? Find out the inside scoop on the latest conspiracies, paranormal activity, and Freudian phenomena when you subscribe to Tim Beckley's Conspiracy Journal. It's jam-packed with stories, special book and DVD promotions, and the best news, it's absolutely free, sent right to your mailbox. Plus, a bonus free email newsletter sent out every Friday. Simply send an email with your name and address to Mr. UFO at webtv.net. That's Mr. UFO at webtv.net. Find out what they don't want you to know.
You've thought about it for years. Well, the time is now. You need a secret bunker, and you need it deep and strong. Atlas Survival Shelters should be your first and only choice. The experts at Atlas can help you choose a shelter that has all the comforts of your home and is 11 times stronger than square box shelters. Call Atlas at 1-855-4BUNKERS. 1-855-4BUNKERS. Or visit IWantThatBunker.com. Atlas Survival Shelters. Better prepared than scared.
Ceramic body armor is rated to stop 6 hits. But what about the 7th? Unlike ceramic or Kevlar, Infidel body armor is proven to take hit after hit, and it just won't quit. Reasonably priced and designed for the smart civilian prepper, Infidel stops hundreds of hits from small arms to high-powered rifles. That means safety and peace of mind. Buy yours at InfidelBodyArmor.com. Spelled INFIDEL BodyArmor.com. Infidel Body Armor just won't quit.
Alabama, it's coming, and it's the event you and your family will not want to miss. The Southern Preppers Convention and Green Living Expo, Saturday and Sunday, September 7th and 8th at the newly renovated Oxford Civic Center in Oxford, Alabama, where admission is totally free. There's something for everyone. Free classes and seminars on topics like food preparation, food harvesting, and food preservation. Free giveaways every 30 minutes. You could win seed kits, food, doTERRA oil, starter kits, water filters, and more, including a year's supply of food. Guest speakers include Bob from Black Dog Survival School, Mike from White Harvest Seeds, Dr. Tom Stoner from Dr. Med Kits, and more. And be sure to stop by and check out the Longevity booth. The Southern Preppers Convention and Green Living Expo, September 7th and 8th. A weekend of education and preparation that's totally free to attend. Don't forget, the Country Inn and Suites in Oxford has special rates available for those who attend the expo. Get all the details at thesouthernpreppers.com. That's thesouthernpreppers.com.
A little over a year ago, I began to do a lot of research into why, even if I had a pretty good-sized meal, that I was still starving. And my research led me to a well-known fact that most of the soils that we grow our crops on here in the United States and across the industrialized world are almost completely depleted of almost all of the key minerals and trace elements that our bodies need to rebuild themselves, fight off cancer, and be healthy. I then searched out the best vitamin and mineral company out there and discovered Longevity. The Longevity products are designed to give you the real nutrition you need, and once you've got that, you don't have to eat as much to be satisfied. I've lost 37 pounds in 2 months, simply getting the vitamins and minerals I need. Check it out for yourself. It's incredible. Go to InfoWarsTeam.com today and order your first canister of Beyond Tangy Tangerine Complete Multivitamin Mineral Complex Dietary Supplement. That's InfoWarsTeam.com.
Hi, my name is Richard Dolan. You're listening to the Paracast.
On the Paracast, we're going back into time to 1915. Grisly Murders. What attracted Walter Bosley and his co-author to look at this? Just funny, I was mentioning that TV series Covert Affairs about the young, pretty CIA agent. Of course, the name she uses on the air is Annie Walker. And you were in touch with someone named Ann Walker. Very strange.
You're kidding me. I've never watched Covert Affairs. Annie Walker, huh?
That's right.
You know, that's a whole other show, a show about synchronicity.
I was thinking about that because you wonder if they just picked that name out of whole cloth or they had some reason for it. Okay, so you got pieced together something that happened in 1915. You go to the library. You start putting it together. What next?
Well, as I said, I noticed, there's something funny going on here because along with this mystery woman, we have 6 other people who died under very curious circumstances within days or weeks of this woman, before and after. And my research quickly went from a fun, little hunt for ghost stories to something quite a bit more serious. My initial gut impression was that there was a serial killer operating in San Bernardino in 1915. Very intriguing, idea. And so I set out to gather any evidence I could that would, tell me if my gut feeling was, accurate or not. And the more I looked at it, the stranger it got. And yet, part of the strange aspect of it was it really, I came away, and others that looked at it with me came away with the idea that the police were not sharing everything they knew with the newspapermen, as they should, and that was correct. They shouldn't have, because the newspapermen were getting stuff wrong left and right to begin with. And that the community just kind of wanted this to go away afterwards, because you never find another mention of it again in the local newspapers or local history at all until my first book. So it went almost 100 years until it was publicly mentioned again. But let's just say by January 1916, this issue was buried.
And I think, Walter, we should remind people that 100 years ago, San Bernardino was not the big, thriving, populated place that it is today. I mean, we're talking about a relatively small, rural, agricultural community, if memory serves me correct, from reading your book. I mean, the population back then was tiny compared.
It was about 12,000.
Okay.
12,000 people.
In today's world, that's like a small town.
Yeah, absolutely.
Today, there's hundreds of thousands of people that live in the area. So a series of deaths, suspicious, possibly at the very least unexplained and curious deaths in a small town like that. You would think that this would reverberate through the community. And you're saying that this pretty much within a year. I mean, boom, that was it.
Well, what's interesting is at the time, you have to remember, as you said, yes, San Bernardino was small in today's terms. However, back then, what I discovered, right now, San Bernardino and what they call the 909 and this part of the Inland Empire, it's the butt of a lot of jokes because, quite frankly, I mean, San Bernardino's just gone bankrupt. San Bernardino has been, quite frankly, not really a great place for too many years now. Back then, and this surprised me because I have spent a good chunk of my life in this area, coming and going. I was surprised to find that San Bernardino, back in 1915, was the garden spot of Southern California. Tourists from all over the country and from all over the world, if they came to Southern California, they came to San Bernardino, and particularly to visit the park that was here. It's called Urbita Springs Park. It had a big lake. It had rides, carnival rides. It had bandstands. It was the Disneyland of its day. And like I said, I grew up and spent a lot of time here throughout my life, and I was totally surprised. I had never really looked into it, but I'd never heard of this. And it was in the lake at Urbita Springs Park that the woman Cora Stanton died. And, this mystery is surrounded. So San Bernardino, even though by today's standards, yes, 12,000 people, isn't very big. And even then, that wasn't very big. However, on their 4th of July picnic, they used to draw a crowd bigger than the population of the city. Now, this is according to more than one report back then. I mean, so they would draw, 15 to 20,000 people or more to their park for their 4th of July celebration. So it really was this wonderful place that, over the years just kind of faded away. And it lends to the whole mystique, of what I've researched.
Now, when you're looking over mysterious deaths, I think a simple question here before we go on, was anybody caught? Did they ever find a perpetrator?
No. And here's the thing. It did not go reported as a serial murder, of course. And back then, America had already had H.H. Holmes in the 1890s. And, England had, of course, had Jack the Ripper before that. So the concept of a serial killer was not completely unknown, maybe not under that term. They would have called them a mass murder or something. But what was very suspicious to me was that you had 7 people, 3 of them alleged suicides, but there were strange circumstances around their alleged suicides. One of them was just supposedly just a mere boating accident, but the other three were minors. They were two small children and a teenager, and they were poisoned. And what was astonishing to me was that when you look at these newspaper reports, the parents of the kids were cleared, that they had nothing to do with it. The two small children, it was reported that they had very likely been given poison candy, but the report never goes into who gave it to them. It doesn't even mention, gosh, we have some fiend running around who's, giving these children poison candy. It just says that they briefly considered, that the kids had eaten match heads, but it was, later reported that they had been given poison candy. And the teenage girl, that she had eaten a poisoned orange, and nobody knew where she got it from. But here's the other interesting thing. Back then, forensics regarding toxins was a little bit more advanced than you might think, and poisoning was one of the most popular methods to murder people. There were a lot of murder cases that involved poisoning. The toxins that killed these children were never identified. I thought that was very interesting. And but with all this going on, you don't have any mention of possibly, there's a killer out there. Now, there was one guy who was arrested on a train, and he was kind of ended up being a loose thread in the first book, and when I pulled that thread, he became much more important in the second book. But he was a young guy in his early 20s, arrested on a train just less than 2 weeks, or around 10 days after the death of the woman Cora Stanton, and he's found with a woman's purse. He is hallucinating. He's basically having a nervous breakdown, and he's claiming that he sees the face of a woman who others are accusing him of assaulting. Now, he's taken off the train, and he's committed into the local hospital. I believe County Hospital was the hospital, because that was the logical choice and the available details. I was able to confirm that he didn't go to Patton State Hospital. But the interesting thing is here we have this mysterious death of this woman and all these curious deaths going on, and here we have a guy arrested on a train in possession of a woman's purse, and he's committed into the hospital. He's freaking out. You would think, oh, well, here's your guy. He was on a train trying to get out of town. Well, the police and the hospital release him into the custody of these unidentified friends from Sonora, and off he goes, and there's never a mention of him again.
Obviously, they didn't have a very good vetting process, or maybe they were so overcrowded they just wanted to get rid of the guy. There's so many more questions to ask about that, and also whether, and this is something you see on shows like Criminal Minds, anything has ever happened in that community, say 10, 20, 30 years later, that may have seemed superficially unrelated. Further investigations. Maybe it'll start him on a third and fourth book, although the third one is under construction now. Walter Bosley has joined us. With Gene and Chris, you're in
the Paracast. Are you tired of searching for great talk radio?
Something more important.
Search no more. We are the GCN Radio Network.
Hi, this is Ted Anderson. If you'd like to listen to GCN programs on the go, I have great news. GCN has created a Droid and iPhone application, and it's free. Just as easy as going to GCNlive.com, click on the banner, and download. Before you know it, you'll be listening to your favorite hard-hitting GCN shows, live or on demand, right on your Droid or iPhone, 24/7 and on the go. So download the Droid and iPhone app free by clicking on the banner at GCNlive.com. Thanks again for listening to GCNlive.com. Again, that's GCNlive.com. We the people grow cotton, weave fabric, engrave ink, embed strips and fibers to protect from counterfeit, then carting to a private bank, having it led back at interest, forcing taxes to service debt. This capitalism, or was Jefferson correct when stating a central bank issuing the public currency is a greater menace to the liberties of the people than a standing army? Ted Anderson, I'm placing a free silver dollar in a book that explains our monetary system. Call for your copy, 800-686-2237. It's time to understand the system. Call 800-686-2237. That's 800-686-2237.
Are you still a traditional smoker? Now experience a new lifestyle and try vaping with e-cigarettes by LeSig. Imagine no ashes, stains, nasty smell, or coughing and hacking. With LeSig e-cigarettes' revolutionary microelectronic technology, rechargeable battery, and unique replaceable cartridge, you'll get all the benefits and satisfaction of smoking without the hazards. Choose your taste from a wide variety of our new American-made vape-free e-liquids at LeSig.com. And LeSig smokes the competition by serving thousands of worldwide customers with real people customer service, fast, free, same-day shipping, and a 30-day warranty and satisfaction guarantee. So are you ready for a new vaping lifestyle? Then call 870-518-4307. That's 870-518-4307. Or visit LeSig.com, spelled LECIG.com. LeSig e-cigarettes for today's modern smoker.
Welcome back to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio. And now, here's Gene Steinberg.
With Gene and Chris in the Paracast, exploring these horrible apparent murders going back to 1915 in San Bernardino, California. Very different place than it is today. Okay, Walter Bosley. One thing, of course, we see on those TV shows is you always look for a signature of a serial killer. For some reason, they have to do things in the same way. But the first killing was different from the remaining 6.
Yes. Yes, indeed. And the first book, this is where the first book discovers an interesting little association to the Zodiac Killer, which surprised me. I did not expect that at all.
That's out of left field. How so?
Well, I was looking at this, and for the very thing you mentioned, what is the connection here? What is the one thing that all these deaths have in common? And what I found, going back to the original thing that led me to the Cora Stanton story to begin with, was that all these deaths occurred in physical proximity to the energy grid. Now, yes, the energy grid is theoretical. Yes, the map that I had in my possession for almost a year before I discovered this mystery for other research purposes, this is done by, someone whose theory is that, his particular mapping of the grid, which he uses geomorphology, the actual curvature of the terrain and the formation of the terrain. Yes, all of this, of course, is theoretical. We know that. But nonetheless, there it was. I had this map, and I'd had this map for almost a year. And when I looked at it, and I noticed that all these deaths could be plotted in physical proximity, either actually on or very, very nearly right on the lines, that kind of popped up, on my radar. That rose a flag. And as the book states, and I want to be clear here, you do not have to believe in the actuality of this grid or these things to understand. You don't have to believe in it yourself to understand that what Rick and I say in the first book is that the perpetrators, if these indeed are serial killings, the perpetrator or perpetrators, it looks like they might have believed in this stuff, and that he, she, or they might have committed these acts in conjunction with the energy grid for whatever, purposes that they believed would result. And that's really what the book says. The book is not trying to convince anybody that, the energy grid is real. The book presents it as such, as it's presented. I just want to make that distinction, that what we're talking about when we link the energy grid to these murders is that this is what we think was going on in the mind of the possible killer.
Okay, that raises another question, which is, what awareness did they have of this energy grid back in 1915?
Well, as I said, telluric current is something that's been well known to technicians since the mid-1800s. The railroad engineers knew about it. The telegrapher, remember, telegraphy developed hand in hand with the railroad, because that's what, they would string the telegraphy lines along the rail lines. It was what the railroad used to communicate as they were out there, constructing the railroads. And this was, before telephones and before email and all that, there was telegraphy, sending a telegraph, kind of what we do with our texting, but on our cell phones, which I find kind of amusing, that in the 21st century on our telephones, essentially we're using 19th century means of communication. But, this is something that has been around. The U.S. Navy, in the years right up to World War I, they were coming up with what's called there are ground radio systems, and one of them that they toyed around with was literally a ground radio system, which kind of tapped into this energy going through the ground to simply boost radio capability. So this is something that's very real, and people back then would have known about it, particularly anybody who worked on the railroad. Now, here's the thing. Was there anybody who might have worked on the railroad in San Bernardino in 1915? Well, by golly, it just so happens that the largest railroad yard in the southwest United States at that time was right here in San Bernardino. There were a lot of railroad employees, a lot right here. So this was a major railroad hub, and that does factor, as you know, in the first book, that factors plenty in this whole mystery. Yeah, there was plenty of opportunity for there to be someone, some psychopath or whoever the perpetrator was, whatever they were, to be aware of this grid and to kind of apply it in what they were doing.
They're using it then as an excuse. But is it possible the grid or the electromagnetic radiation impacts certain people who are unduly sensitive, so they do things that maybe they wouldn't do ordinarily?
I don't think so. It's an extreme low frequency. I think what we're talking about here is, people who believe, for instance, what we say is we propose the theory that the perpetrator or perpetrators were killing people in association with their perception of this grid in order to inject the grid with energy, which within their beliefs would have given them, some boost and a magical working or served whatever their aims and goals were within their own mind, or within their little group, whatever they believed they were accomplishing.
So, Walter, you're talking about sort of at the time, it would be like a high-tech form of ritual magic is what I'm hearing here.
Exactly.
Now, you mentioned extremely low frequency. Can you give us some cycles? What are we talking about? What is the Earth mean tone is 7 cycles? Where does this fall in terms of how many cycles per second?
My research was focused on, just the idea that this was very possibly done by the perpetrators and why the perpetrators were doing it. But essentially, it's an ELF. Extreme low frequency is about to the extent I took that, because that was all that was the extent necessary at the time that I needed to know.
Okay. Yeah, it'd be interesting to know how many cycles per second we're talking about, because that to me is important as a musician. I mean, everything is frequency in terms of playing notes and stuff, and I'd just kind of like to get a sense of how.
If you're going to look at this stuff as a ritual magician, sure, that kind of detail, would be important. Remember, my focus wasn't so much on the details of, that kind of detail on the ritual magic. I was.
Well, no, I'm talking about the science behind this telluric current. Is what I'm talking about. What is that particular current's frequency? That's my question. I'm just curious.
Yeah, I don't happen to know off the top of my head, but it might, provide some more interesting information, to be sure.
Yeah, because you can then look at things like the Taos hum and the Kokomo hum and various extremely low frequencies that have been detected and bothered people. sometimes if they're real sensitive to it. So, just in your travels, or maybe ask Sesh about that. How many cycles are we talking about with this grid? I'd be very interested to know.
Absolutely. Now that you bring it up, I'm even more curious about that aspect. That's the thing about this whole mystery is, and why I like talking, with people about it. Folks like you and Seshari and others, is there's always something, some new angle on it that I hadn't thought of that they point out, from their own experience and their own expertise.
Well, I like that we sometimes start people thinking maybe a little out of the box. We're going to continue with more discussions with Walter Bosley. With Gene and Chris, you're in
the Paracast.
Attack of the Rockoids has been well received by critics and readers alike. It's a thrill-a-minute story you'll never forget. A former U.S. military intelligence officer is haunted by intense dreams about a beautiful woman pleading for his help after a terrible battle in outer space. But the dreams turn out to be true and thrust him into a telepathic love affair with a woman whose faraway planet is intent on destroying the Earth. And now the gripping tale continues in The Coming of the Protectors. It's the second book of the Rockoids trilogy, a galaxy-spanning adventure that pits our hapless heroes against powerful, fanatical enemies that threaten the lives of freedom-loving beings everywhere. Attack of the Rockoids and The Coming of the Protectors, classic science fiction at its best, available now. For more details, visit rockoids.com. That's ROCKOIDS.com.
Friends, this is Alex Jones for MidasResources.com. For more than 15 years, I have exclusively used Midas Resources for all my precious metal needs. Whether it's bullion or collectibles you're looking for, Midas Resources is simply the best. I own my gold as a hedge against inflation. This Federal Reserve fiat currency could go the way of the Deutschmark and the Weimar Republic anytime. In these historically dangerous times, it makes sense to physically hold gold and silver. Midas already has some of the best deals in the industry. But if you give them a call and mention the radio special, they will give you a list of the day's super specials. Midas brokers are standing by to answer all your questions at 800-686-2237. They also have a lot of informative free literature explaining the opportunities and risk of holding precious metals. They are ready to answer your questions at 800-686-2237. Again, that's 800-686-2237.
Are you still a traditional smoker? Now experience a new lifestyle and try vaping with e-cigarettes by LeSig. Imagine no ashes, stains, nasty smell, or coughing and hacking. With LeSig e-cigarettes' revolutionary microelectronic technology, rechargeable battery, and unique replaceable cartridge, you'll get all the benefits and satisfaction of smoking without the hazards. Choose your taste from a wide variety of our new American-made vape-free e-liquids at LeSig.com. And LeSig smokes the competition by serving thousands of worldwide customers with real people customer service, fast, free, same-day shipping, and a 30-day warranty and satisfaction guarantee. So are you ready for a new vaping lifestyle? Then call 870-518-4307. That's 870-518-4307. Or visit LeSig.com, spelled LECIG.com. LeSig e-cigarettes for today's modern smoker.
Amino acids are the building blocks of proteins. Amino acids have to be delivered to your body in the shape that nature gave them if they are to be used to create new proteins in your body. Just like a bricklayer cannot use bent or twisted bricks to build a brick wall, so too your body cannot use bent or twisted amino acids to build new proteins. Giving your body an undamaged amino acid food can make a huge difference in your health. One World Whey is an undamaged amino acid food unlike any other. You see, heating bends and twists amino acids, and all whey protein powders we've investigated, and most proteins you consume are heated. With our True Cool process, you now have a choice with One World Whey.
My name is Daniel. I'm 34 years old. When I started using One World Way, I weighed 228 pounds. Now, after 2.5 months, I weigh 182 pounds. This is my ideal weight. I've noticed an increase in stamina, rate of recovery from workouts, and an increase in my potency.
Call 888-988-3325 or visit oneworldway.com.
We'd like to hear from you. If you have a comment or question about the Paracast, send it to news@theparacast.com. That's news@theparacast.com. And don't forget to visit our famous Paracast community forums at forum.theparacast.com.
Walter Bosley joining us with Gene and Chris on the Paracast. And he's written 2 books that cover this case, one with Richard Spence, under the collective title Empire of the Wheel. The first, Espionage, the Occult, and Murder in Southern California, and the second one subtitled Friends from Sonora. I'm kind of interested in the way those titles worked out. So let's look at that. All right. The occult. What occult and or espionage aspects do you uncover?
Well, in the first book, it pretty much illustrates what was going on in Southern California at that time relative to World War I. Europe was embroiled in World War I. The United States was not overtly yet, had not been, officially brought into the war. California, I discovered as I got deeper into this, California was neck deep in foreign agent activity. German and British agents were all over the state, and also there was something called the Hindu-German alliance, because India at that time was struggling for its independence from Britain. The Germans and in India, they had teamed up. Naturally, Germany was at war with England and wanted England busy on 2 fronts. So what Germany was doing through California was supplying Indian agents with weapons that would be smuggled out of San Diego across the Pacific to what was Burma, and then into the hands of Indian insurgents in India. This also kind of exploded into terrorism and sabotage going on up and down the California coast. Very interesting in itself. I mean, that in itself would make a fascinating book. Historically, if you're looking for the evidence of this, look up the Annie Larsen affair, Larsen. The Annie Larsen was a boat that was caught with these German munitions leaving San Diego, headed for Burma, and that's how this all became uncovered. Well, the book, mine and Rick's first book, Empire of the Wheel 1, shows the evidence that the guns that were being smuggled from the Gulf of Mexico into Texas and through the American Southwest by rail had to have gone through the hub in San Bernardino. Now, if you're smuggling weapons, you're a military agent smuggling weapons to an ally via, railroad in this case, and those munitions, that smuggled contraband, is going to be switched from one train to another. I guarantee you're going to have agents there at the switch point to make sure everything goes smoothly. So between that and the presence of German immigrants, which in the business of intelligence operations and such, you have to look at your immigrant communities for, where the agents would be buried. History has proven that. And when you're in this business, you learn that pretty quickly. I argue, Rick agrees, and the book presents that there very likely were these German agents that would have been there and would have been overseeing the transfer. Right there, if you've got German agents in the area, then you're going to have British agents also. And lo and behold, just like there was a German immigrant community here, there was a British expat, so to speak, community right here in the Inland Empire. And a British expat was actually numbered among the 7 victims, the 7 curious deaths. And the book goes into all of this. So all of this kind of thing was going on, during that era leading up to the United States going into the war. So there was the possibility that perhaps maybe some espionage skullduggery was involved in this. However, the problem there is it does not explain the deaths of the children.
Walter, the parents, do the parents have any connection to one another? Do they know each other? Do they have employment, or did they have employment that might relate to anything, the railroad, possible
None
police
that we could
activities?
None that we could ever find. That and I looked for that. I specifically looked for, did these kids know each other? No. The 14-year-old girl was from Redlands. The two small children, 2 years old and 4 years old, brother and sister, they were from over here, what we call East Highland. And, back then, even less so would small Highland children be acquainted with a 14-year-old in Redlands, unless the families knew each other. And again, I was never able to find a connection there with what's available. So.
That makes it difficult. And I suppose if this involves some crazy spy who did a little serial killing on the side, well, maybe he or she left the country long before anything was ever resolved, so that makes it even more difficult to figure it out.
Absolutely. I mean, if one of the agencies had employed a psychopath and there he was operating, doing his contracted killings, and you're right, he had extracurricular activities on the side, that is a possibility that, we bring up. By no means do we say, we've nailed it, we've identified the perpetrator. We do present our theory as to who it could have been in a general sense, but, no specific identity were we ever able to really point to. And that was not really, entirely the point of the book. I mean, there's really quite enough there. Just the first book introduces the idea that, hey, look at this, there's something funny going on here, and here's what makes it strange. But absolutely, it's somebody who came and went. All we're left with is, being able to speculate in as an educated manner as possible.
What do the police records show here? There must be something that indicates when they just gave up the investigation.
Well, that's interesting. The police department, I was told when I made my query there and requested the opportunity to look at the records, I was told that those records had been put in a off-site storage location, and due to a fire, they were destroyed. They no longer exist.
Ain't that convenient?
Yeah, because I would have liked to have gotten my hands on the alleged suicide note of the woman Cora Stanton, because, as a copy of it I could have, had forensically analyzed, and they could tell you things like, did a woman or a man write this letter? And that would have been very interesting and very telling to have a copy of that. And because she died a complete stranger and there was no next of kin who ever claimed her, her suicide note, the public has a right to. See, that's how it works. If there's family or someone who can claim the individual, the public does not have any access or right to access to the suicide note. Like they're an orphan or a stranger, an unknown, the public can get access to that. So it would have been interesting, absolutely.
And certainly with the deaths of children, you think that parents and other relatives and friends would be spending a lot of time seeking a way to try to solve these cases, especially if you have 6 of them that may or may not be related. Gets to be very intricate.
The interesting thing, and the book, presents this. Here's what's interesting. You had 3 children who were clearly poisoned. Even the newspaper accounts say they were poisoned, and there was, no perpetrator ever identified, and the toxin wasn't identified. However, the whole city was more fascinated with the woman known as Cora Stanton, and she got all the publicity, she got all the interest, all the concern, and these 3 children who Rick and I are 95% certain that they were murdered,
We hardly paid attention to them. Walter Bosley joining Gene and Chris. You're in
the Paracast.
The GCN Radio Network, providing the world with hard-hitting talk radio. GCN. Great talk radio starts here.
Graphic Converter is the image manipulation tool for the rest of us. It does not use any database. You get full control of all your files. Want to view the images of a folder? Drag it into Graphic Converter, and a powerful browser opens up to show your image files. You could use it for slideshows. You could use it to import images from digital cameras or from scanners. Need to do some image editing? You can do that too in Graphic Converter. Also print catalogs. Convert from so many many formats I can't even list them. Download now to see if Graphic Converter is good for you, like 1.5 million other users. Guess what? You could save money when you buy Graphic Converter. Use the coupon code Night Owl. Use the coupon code Night Owl to get a special price for Graphic Converter. Go to lemkesoft.com. That's LEMKEsoft.com. lemkesoft.com. LEMKEsoft.com.
Hi there. My name is Frank Bates. What I'm about to tell you in the next 60 seconds could get me in a lot of trouble. I just created a free video presentation at 123coverup.com that exposes the electricity monopolies and government agencies for what they really are: incompetent, lying crooks that are counting on your ignorance and fear to keep your power bills criminally high. Some have called this a conspiracy. Others have called it a cover-up, and you will be shocked to find out how deep the conspiracy goes. My video at 123coverup.com exposes the truth and shows you the secret of how I beat them and how you can beat them too. Watch the controversial video that thousands of other smart patriots have already seen in the last 3 months. Go to 123coverup.com and discover one weird trick to slash your power bill and protect your home. Go watch my video now at 123coverup.com before they force me to shut it down. Again, that's 123coverup.com.
Got a simple question for you. Can you sell? Yes? Okay. Can you sell the intangible? If yes, and you'd like to work 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, with no overtime, no weekends, if you're passionate about not closing sales, but about opening relationships, if you truly have a desire to serve global clients who need your advertising expertise, and you're local to the Twin Cities and Burnsville, are hardworking, self-driven, with experience in sales, marketing, or advertising, are personable, and a whiz on the phone, GCN wants to talk with you right now. GCN, the Genesis Communications Network, is one of the largest independent talk radio networks in the world, and we're hiring right now. We offer benefits and an excellent commission structure. Experience preferred, but we'll train the right person. Is that you? Submit your resume today to advertise@gcnlive.com. Again, that's advertise@gcnlive.com. Come work with the Genesis Communications Network, an equal opportunity employer. Normal blood pressure, naturally. How would that make you feel?
I'm Don from New Mexico. January of 2000, I had a heart attack. Then my real health began going downhill, and I had high blood pressure, high blood sugar, poor vision, and I really wasn't sleeping well. I was a mess, pretty much.
Don reports dramatic improvements with Heart and Body Extract.
I started taking Heart and Body Extract, and from within a few days, I started sleeping a lot better. My blood pressure normalized, my blood sugar normalized, and my sleep really did improve.
Experience these benefits and more when your body gets what it needs with the assistance of Heart and Body Extract. Order at hbextract.com or call 866-295-5305. That's hbextract.com or call 866-295-5305.
And folks, I did not expect this at all. By the 7th, 8th, and 9th day, I saw dramatic improvements from taking Heart and Body Extract.
Details at hbextract.com or call 866-295-5305 for Heart and Body Extract.
This is Jerome Clark, author of the UFO Encyclopedia and other books. You're listening to the Paracast.
With Gene and Chris, we have Walter Bosley, who's former Air Force counterintelligence agent, former member of the FBI, and private investigator, trying to unearth these strange murders, apparent murders back in 1915. Now, as we continue with this, trying to understand what happened and trying to find a connection. Now, obviously, we don't have the police records unless something turned up in somebody's home. You know, you always think, you know, the classic story on Law and Order or something where one of the police detectives is frustrated over the progress or lack of progress in the case. He takes the case files home. He does his own private investigation of it to find out what happened, but there was nothing like that ever?
Nothing that I ever found. As a matter of fact, the police department was, pretty firm that, nope, these records don't exist. Sorry, they're destroyed. When I went to the coroner's office, you'll find this interesting. When I first went there to get just one of the records of the 7 victims, what little there was, I went into the coroner's office. The lady who they brought out to handle my request, she was very friendly, very nice. I mean, just a real nice, bubbly personality, very talkative. And about a week or so later, when my record was ready, they called me. They said I could pick it up. When I went back to pick it up, the same woman was called out, and it was as if she was a different person. She was very cold. She was she was looking at me with daggers in her eyes. Just one word, abrupt answers. I tried to make small talk with her. She had been so friendly before, and I tried to make chit chat. Hey, good morning, how you doing? That kind of thing. And she would have none of it, and she was just very cold. She goes, "Here's your report," and handed me the envelope. She stood there glaring at me as I thanked her and left. Went out to my car and left. And I thought, wow. That's very curious. What happened between the time I made the request for this 90-something-year-old record and this reaction? You have to wonder.
Yeah, whether maybe she was in a bad mood. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe she was in a bad mood. Who knows? But you still have to kind of note it and wonder, was there something about that particular... And in that particular record, the newspaper accounts have this particular victim's body found in 3 different places that are far enough away from each other that it makes you wonder, okay, what the heck was going on here? So, now that I just told you about the coroner's office, I didn't put that in the book. There's nothing in the book about personal experiences. This is not a book about me. This is not a book about Rick. This is a book about the situation. But, that was something that happened in the investigation that I thought was a very curious thing.
Well, this whole thing is very curious, but I'm still trying to understand what possible occult aspect might we find here.
Well, the book points out the fact that San Bernardino at the time was very active in the spiritualist community. Now, the spiritualists back then, with a capital S, they were the New Age enthusiasts of their day. These were the people, where you would find in their circles, your occult enthusiasts. And actually, the very first spiritualist temple established in the state of California was the temple right here in San Bernardino. It had been established in the late 1800s by one of the original Mormon pioneers, a guy who was actually just attached to the Mormons to guide them west. He was kind of a not really a fully committed Mormon, you might say. But several of the original San Bernardino pioneers that came out with the Mormons to establish the city, they broke away from their association with the church, and they founded this spiritualist temple. And they were reported to have been quite an interesting little group. They would go into the canyons and conduct what we would call rituals. It was reported that they would go out there and try to contact disembodied spirits and entities and such things, such spooky goings on. And
Stephen Greer would have felt right at home.
Yeah, they were quite present and active in 1915. In fact, several members of society were involved in this spiritualist temple back then. And so, we took a closer look at them, and we looked at spiritualist circles in general across the U.S., and we found some very interesting things, some dark things. If you recall, in the 1920s, Harry Houdini very famously went after the spiritualists, and without going into that, because that's a thing that people can read about, and whatever you think of that is, your own opinion, either side. But here was the flag. And to go back to that, basically some people, myself included, suspect that spiritualists were involved in the death of Harry Houdini. There's a whole bunch of, I like to use the word skullduggery, there's a whole bunch of mystery and skullduggery surrounding Houdini's death. And Houdini, if those familiar with his fight against the spiritualists, you recall, was working very closely with a man named Walter Franklin Prince, who was the head of the American Psychical Research Society. And what was interesting, what flag totally popped up in my case, is that in 1915, the Reverend Dr. Walter Franklin Prince was the rector at St. John's Episcopal Church in San Bernardino. And Walter Prince, the very same man who, with Houdini, went up against the spiritualists in the following decade, Walter Prince was the one who gave Cora Stanton, an alleged suicide, a very public funeral and last rites and all that, which in those days was a huge no-no to do for a suicide. And that is where things really began to get even more interesting on the occult angle, because if you really dig into Walter Franklin Prince, you'll find that he was an expert on psychic phenomena, manifestations, and things that are very often, connected to, occult practices and such. So you had the spiritualists, and you had Walter Franklin Prince, and you had Harry Houdini himself performing in Los Angeles during the month that all this mystery was going on. It begins to get a lot more interesting there. And to top it all off, I was able to show that Aleister Crowley himself.
I was just going to mention, you're talking expats and British agents and the occult and stuff, and I remember a conversation with you several years ago when you were researching the book about Crowley.
Yeah, I called you. I can remember that conversation. I was walking around downtown Redlands that very day I called you. I can remember that moment asking you about Crowley. I was able to determine that Aleister Crowley himself, it is a known fact that he was in Southern California during the time of this mystery. I was able to show that he had to have passed through San Bernardino just days before our mystery woman, Cora Stanton, was found dead. And boy, oh boy, spiritualist, Walter Prince, Harry Houdini, and then Aleister Crowley on the scene. Things went down a possible occult road right there.
It's interesting here to also consider, and this is going to be more research than anybody would ever want, and that is, if something weird happened, if there was any connection with all these events, it wasn't just coincidence, would it have been repeated in another part of the country where some of these people were present at the time? If you're looking for connections, I guess that's the kind of thing to consider. Is that a possibility, or is that just complete foolishness? And I'll grant it could be foolishness. You might have that answer in our next segment, which is why we're going to make a cliffhanger out of it. But it could be foolishness, or it could be something significant. I mean, if they all gathered in San Bernardino, where else did they gather? No connection? That's fine. Walter Bosley talking about 2 books covering Empire of the Wheel. More to come. You're in the Paracast.
America's #1 source for independent talk radio for over a decade. We are the GCN Radio Network.
Whether it's personal mail, whether it's business email, you want reliable, dependable delivery, freedom from spam, freedom from viruses. Well, Polaris Mail offers professional email hosting services for your personal or small business use. Each account uses 25 gigabytes of storage, an easy-to-use webmail interface, and full mobile sync. Sign up today for a 30-day free trial at polarismail.com, polarismail.com.
So here's what happened. I was placing an order online. The site went down. It just stopped responding. It took hours before it returned, but I'd already placed the order with another company. If your site goes down, you could lose business. And if you have a business or personal site, you'll want to know it's easy to run and it will stay online. At iWeb, your site is hosted on one of the most reliable networks in the world. Check it out. iWeb.com. That's iWeb.com.
Can you pluck a chicken in about 90 seconds? You can with Power Plucker. Plucking by hand is a chore, but the Power Plucker makes it fast and easy. Simply chuck Power Plucker into your power drill and watch those feathers fly off. Save time and money with our complete home processing kits, too. For free USA shipping and 10% discount, go to PowerPlucker.com and enter promo code RADIO. PowerPlucker.com, the only drill-powered poultry plucker.
You are now in the crosshairs. The NSA and the FBI are treating you like a criminal and monitoring your every move. Ron Paul said recently, the evidence of the totalitarian nature of this government is on display undeniably every day. What's taking place right now is a coup and the destruction of the Constitution. Fortunately, there is something you can do about it. Learn how to be invisible, lock down your privacy, and even disappear forever. Go to privacylockdown.com to learn how. That's privacylockdown.com.
It's hurricane and wildfire season again. Why do thousands of people sit in these reoccurring problem areas year after year, betting their lives that the disaster won't get them? Hundreds of you helped eFoods Direct ship 50,000 donated meals to the Oklahoma victims. The problem is we can't help everybody. If every one of us who can will take care of ourselves, we can all pitch in to take care of those who really can't. The new Just In Case pack from eFoods Direct is the big brother to the 7-day emergency pack designed for Oklahoma disaster donations. It contains a 2-month supply for one person, or a 1-month supply for 2 adults, or a 2-week supply for a family of 4. The $320 price is $50 less than retail. Call 800-409-5633 on the web efoodsdirect.com/Alex. Order 2 or more, get 10% off, free shipping applies. Call 800-409-5633 on the web efoodsdirect.com/Alex.
Hi, I'm Dr. Joel Wallach, the Dead Doctors Don't Lie guy. There's no reason why you shouldn't live to be at least 100 and have a great time getting there. And I'm going to give you a free copy of my lecture that tells you exactly how to do it. In fact, after you've lived a long and healthy life, there should be only 2 documents in your medical chart, a birth certificate and a death certificate. I'm Dr. Wallach with a warning. If you have a 4-inch medical chart, if you take prescription drugs for high cholesterol, high blood pressure, arthritis, joint pains, and other health issues, the medical profession is failing you. They're using you for an ATM machine. My free lecture is going to reveal what pharmaceutical companies don't want you to know. There's been groundbreaking research and discoveries on how to effectively treat or eliminate over 900 different diseases naturally. And it's all in my free lecture called Deadly Recipe. So call toll-free 1-855-79-YOUNG. Again, that's toll-free 1-855-79-YOUNG. 1-855-79-YOUNG.
Hi, this is Ted Phillips listening to the Paracast, and it's as good as it gets, believe me.
With Gene and Chris in the Paracast, Walter Bosley talking about the strange circumstances possibly behind 7 murders in San Bernardino County in California in 1915. And he talked about the confluence of events here where Aleister Crowley and Harry Houdini and other people were in and around that area around the same time. So the question here is, Walter, were they ever in other areas at the same time? And is it worth looking for murders there, too?
I think absolutely it's worth looking. Anyone who, is interested in what Rick and I wrote about in the first book especially, if you would be looking for it in your area or other areas, the thing to do is to find out where a geomorphologist or someone who's an expert in telluric current, or even somebody who's seriously into identifying, Earth grid energies, someone who can, trust as reasonably as you can, could identify this for you, and then start looking for unsolved murders. Particularly missing persons, and if you're able to start linking these unsolved murder victims to the grid, that's a start. That's a lead. Does it necessarily mean, this is going on there? No, just with that alone, you cannot conclude that. I'm just saying that's a start. And what I'm saying is that I don't think what I've discovered would necessarily be exclusive to San Bernardino. It just, Rick and I present evidence of the possibility that this happened in San Bernardino at this time, at that particular time, 1915, but certainly. And we go on to point out that we think the Zodiac Killer was doing just that thing up in the Bay Area as well as in Southern California.
Okay, so you bring up the Zodiac Killer. So do we find any connections at all between the circumstances of those 1915 incidents and what the Zodiac Killer is reputed to have done?
Well, it is suspected very reasonably that the Zodiac Killer, at some point in his life, was a resident of the Inland Empire. And that's kind of a flag right there. And what that says to me, and to Rick and I together, is that it's very possible that the Zodiac Killer had somehow learned about the Cora-Stanton thing and had maybe read, the very same reports. And because I think it's been fairly well established that he was some type of student of the occult and such. And we argue that if we're aware of this energy grid, and if we learned about the Cora-Stanton thing, certainly anyone else could have as well, and certainly why not the Zodiac Killer? What kind of gave me goosebumps was, again, this map that I had, been in possession of for, like a year, around a year. When I decided to look at the Zodiac killing was because one of the killings, which is considered and credited to by most people to be a Zodiac Killer victim attack, was Sherry Jo Bates over here at Riverside Community College. Now, whether you accept the idea, because Zodiac claimed her. Zodiac did indeed claim her. Some people question that, okay, was he just claiming someone else's victim or whatever? But that's a whole other argument that we don't get into. The fact is that where Sherry Jo Bates was murdered, whoever did it, they did it according to the map I have and had in my possession for a year before I made the Zodiac connection. Sherry Jo Bates' murder site was dead on this grid and actually in a straight line conjunction from an important nodal site as identified by the guy who did the map for me. And I thought, okay, set aside whether you believe in this energy grid or not, or set aside whether you believe in these occult ideas related to it. What I argue is that the Zodiac Killer, whoever he was, and the murderer of Sherry Jo Bates, whoever he was, this individual believed in this stuff, because when I plotted all the known Zodiac attacks, they too fell on the lines of the grid, as it's laid out, as it exists, so to speak, up in the Bay Area. And that kind of was startling. It's really the one thing that ties all the victims together, theoretically.
Now, theoretically, they never found out who the Zodiac Killer was, although there were suspicions.
That's right. Well, there were suspicions, but they were never really able to prove or nail the crimes to any of the suspects. And one argument could be that there was more than one person involved. Now, of course, there are Zodiac experts, Zodiac aficionados, many of them, just self-proclaimed, who, oh my gosh, that's, they would argue vehemently against the idea. It was just, it's kind of like Lee Harvey Oswald was the lone gunman, the Zodiac Killer was a lone nut, and they insist on that. I just personally disagree with that as a certainty. Could have been one guy, could have been more than one guy. We just don't know. Rick and I, in the first Empire of the Wheel book, we do not even attempt to identify the Zodiac Killer. What we do is present, based on what we have, the idea that the Zodiac Killer was attacking his victims in conjunction with this energy grid.
Now, if we look at that around the country, do we find a higher incidence of possible serial killings near a grid?
Well, I haven't, I've been so busy with just working on what happened here in the Inland Empire that I haven't even begun, and that would be a great thing for another researcher look into and take up. Absolutely, I would.
Walter, give me a copy of the map. I'll overlay it on the areas of high incidence in the cattle mutilation phenomenon that I'm currently writing about.
Yeah. And
we're putting some pretty fascinating things together here, all from this one incident. You were saying?
What did you want me to elaborate on?
We're starting a whole thing here. But I guess the big question here is, as we look at this, have you reached yet a brick wall in learning more about this case? Because it looks like you're trying or succeeding in attaching other things. In fact, there's mention in the blurb for your book something like, for example, the 1897 airships. How would that relate?
The Friends from Sonora.
That's right.
Yes, well, there we go to that thread I mentioned earlier related to the gentleman arrested on the train. Now, during the research for the first book, this incident, this gentleman was kind of sticking out to us like a sore thumb, to me especially. What's going on here? Here we have what appears to have been, a serial killer possibly on the rampage, and here we have what appears to be our perfect suspect, a guy kind of, having a nervous breakdown on a train, hallucinating the face of a woman who he says that people are accusing him of assaulting, 10 days after a woman is found dead. And he's in possession of a woman's purse. And at that time, it was, I think, the day before Cora Stanton's purse and alleged purse and her alleged hat and suicide note were all found. So, here's the perfect suspect, right? So they arrest him, and as I said, they take him to the hospital. He is diagnosed as forgot how they put it off the top of my head, but, he was losing it. And then he's just released into the custody of unidentified Friends from Sonora, was how the newspaper put it. Well, you got to ask, I said, okay, Friends from Sonora, is that there's a Sonora in Texas, there's Sonora, Mexico, of course, and then, of course, there's Sonora, California. So I looked at the guy's name, Frank Rosasco, and sure enough, I found a prominent Rosasco ranching family in Tuolumne County up there by Sonora, California. So then I went, holy smokes, what do we have here? Because isn't it interesting that in Sonora, California, we have linked the legend of the Sonora Aero Club, AERO, and the whole Charles Delshall thing about the guys who in the 1850s had discovered, allegedly, the anti-gravity propulsion, and were building flying machines and secretly flying them around Tuolumne County, and they would house their flying machines in barns on private property owned by the ranchers.
We're now getting into something almost related to the UFO mystery, although this is not a UFO-related show. At least I don't think that it is. We have Walter Bosley joining us, trying to unearth all the events surrounding a series of unusual apparent murders in the San Bernardino Valley. A lot more to come with Gene and Chris. You're in the Paracast.
Are you tired of searching for great talk radio?
Something more important.
Search no more. We are the GCN Radio Network.
Hi, this is Ted Anderson. If you'd like to listen to GCN programs on the go, I have great news. GCN has created a Droid and iPhone application, and it's free. Just as easy as going to GCNlive.com, click on the banner, and download. Before you know it, you'll be listening to your favorite hard-hitting GCN shows, live or on demand, right on your Droid or iPhone, 24/7 and on the go. So download the Droid and iPhone app free by clicking on the banner at GCNlive.com. Thanks again for listening to GCNlive.com. Again, that's GCNlive.com. Hi, this is Ted Anderson. Have you ever wondered why banks, stockbrokers, investment advisors won't talk about gold IRAs? They've been available since 1986, yet the financial industry won't recognize the value of gold for your retirement. Gold has outperformed paper investments, yet no word about IRAs. If you would like to have gold for your retirement, call 800-686-2237. Don't get left behind by rising inflation and low returns. Call 800-686-2237. Secure your future and call 1-800-686-2237.
There are those curious about Bitcoins and those using and making money with Bitcoins. What are Bitcoins? A Bitcoin is the first decentralized currency that can be easily transferred from person to person over the internet. No bank needed. This means lower fees, and accounts can never be frozen, limited, or closed. You are in control of your money. And the best part? You can start earning and making money with Bitcoins right away. No computer or expertise is required to earn money with Bitcoins, and a growing number of merchants now accept Bitcoins. Plus, they're easily exchanged for dollars, euros, and more. Learn more about the easiest, cheapest, most profitable way to enter the Bitcoin market and get paid every 2 weeks by one of the fastest growing Bitcoin miners in the world at cloudhashing.com. Just like it sounds, cloudhashing.com. That's cloudhashing.com. We mine your business.
Welcome back to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio. And now, here's Gene Steinberg.
Yes, the trickster voice will soon emerge from Chris O'Brien, because now we're starting to find some really strange stuff.
Yeah, and in another interesting correlation, Walter, I was reunited with my birth family in 2001, and most of them live in Sonora.
Did you ask them what went on in 1915?
You know, I haven't, but I don't really have any relatives alive that would know about that. But they have been in the area since about that time. So
it's an interesting area. It's a wonderful place. I haven't been there yet. I'm going there after I finish shooting my film. I'll be going there to actually talk with a source, relative to following up on this second book and what I'm pursuing, the loose ends of for the third book. But, it was something that was just kind of hanging there. And because the first book doesn't get into that, it was something that, it was a thread I wanted to pull afterwards and see where it led. And just holy smokes, it really did, open up a whole can that really became the second book, because I never would have imagined that there was, anything remotely connected to the Aero Club associated with any of this. I thought we were only dealing with, some crazy, occult-driven serial killer at the most, and at the very least, your average run-of-the-mill psychopath, so to speak.
As if they're run-of-the-mill. Okay, so now we're raising a whole can of worms here about an Aero Club and how could it have been related.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And the second book steps away from the murder investigation aspect of it. It steps away from the occult aspect as it's looked at in the first book. The second book purely follows the thread that's pulled with Frank Rosasco and the Aero Club stuff. And for those not familiar, how do you nutshell this? Basically, there was the 1890s airship mystery, which a lot of folks that are, scholars of and fans of UFO lore and such and history are familiar with. But before that, 40 years before that, there was the mystery of the Sonora Aero Club in California, as written about, revealed, so to speak, by a German immigrant named Charles Delschow, who came to California. Now, this is by his own account. He came to California on behalf of a mysterious organization he said was called NYMZA, N-Y-M-Z-A, to observe and report on the progress and activities of this Sonora Aero Club, which was being run by a group of German immigrants in the Tuolumne County area. And allegedly, the leader of this group, a man named Peter Menace, knew the secret of anti-gravity propulsion, is the best way we could put it today. He had this mechanism that Delschow describes and illustrates in his famous paintings. And it is fueled by something that Menace called SUPA, S-U-P-E, soup or SUPA, and it was a green liquid, apparently. And this mechanism, to me, instantly, when I saw the pictures of it, reminded me of the so-called Nazi bell, which they allegedly got from what we call the mercury vortex engines of the ancient Vimanas. And so, wow, here suddenly we have all this stuff. What in the heck is this about? And how in the heck does it relate, if at all, to what was going on in San Bernardino in 1915? So the second book focuses more on the woman known as Cora Stanton and two other victims, E.P. Braid and O.H. Bailey, and, of course, Frank Rosasco himself, and how they might have been involved in all this airship stuff, and why the airship milieu is to be found mixed in with all this strange stuff, going on in 1915 San Bernardino.
All right, let's mix it up a little bit more. How do you relate it? How can you possibly relate something about airships to people getting killed?
Well, again, it goes back to look at what was going on in 1915. You have a world war going on, and who are the players in it? Germany, in England mainly. And you have a German hand in the airship mystery. Now, I know there's folks out there that, have expressed, difficulty with any German connection to this. And I know that, the mysterious Nimza has been written off as the fantasy that Del Shao made up. And the one that cracks me up is that it's an expression of some type of sexual psychological thing going on there. That one I find amusing. But Del Shao in his writings very specifically says that Nimza was an organization based in Germany, headquartered in Germany. He himself was a German immigrant. You had German immigrants that were really the guys leading the Sonora Aero Club. And yet the attempts at translation of Nimza have always focused on New York, because Nimza being NYMZA, and because there had been mention of money and financial backers coming from New York bankers and financiers. So therefore, the focus always stopped at New York. NYMZA, well, it must be New York something, and one of them is the New York Motor Zephyr Association, which is reasonable. Yeah, I get that one. However, when you look at what Del Shao himself said, my thinking was that it couldn't be a New York answer. Let's look at the German possibilities. So that's where I end up coming up with the German translation for Nimza. And the book goes into that in much greater explanation and detail than I can do justice here. Because admittedly, I'm not a German linguist or a German speaker, but I went to people who are. And so there you have a whole German connection to this airship thing, and here you have World War I going on. And when you get into the whole thing about bankers and war and secret technology and stuff, then you wonder, okay, why would these guys be interested in what was going on in San Bernardino in 1915? And I think the answer to that question probably lies with the energy grid, because my analysis in the second book, as it's presented, presents the evidence for the idea that the airships and how they operated linked into this energy grid. And therefore, anybody doing anything on the energy grid, these airship guys would have been keenly interested in. In other words, if this is a grid they rely on for their secret technology, and somebody's, conducting some shenanigans, particularly involving murder and such, on this energy grid, they theoretically are going to be interested in exactly what these guys are doing and why and how this is going to affect their operation. And that is the speculation, the theory that, I present with, the supporting details of the argument in the second book.
Now, what you told us earlier is that this Aero group started working on this alleged anti-gravity machine, in the middle of the 19th century, like the 1850s or something. So we're going 50, 65 years into the future to see where that led. So the question would be, well, if you felt that they had this possible invention, did they ever succeed in building any real aircraft? And if so, what happened to that real aircraft? So many questions, so little time. Sounds like something else, but I won't quote it because it relates to a movie. The books are under the collective titles of Empire of the Wheel, and we have Walter Bosley joining Gene and Chris. You're in
the Paracast.
Is there a secret UFO agenda? Do strange creatures from the darkest corners of the mind roam the Earth? Is there evidence for mind control, time travel, or devious government conspiracies? Find out the inside scoop on the latest conspiracies, paranormal activity, and Fortean phenomena when you subscribe to Tim Beckley's Conspiracy Journal. It's jam-packed with stories, special book and DVD promotions, and the best news, it's absolutely free, sent right to your mailbox. Plus, a bonus free email newsletter sent out every Friday. Simply send an email with your name and address to Mr. UFO at webtv.net. That's Mr. UFO at webtv.net. Find out what they don't want you to know.
Mike Stenerson for Midas Resources. At no time in history have precious metals been more important, certainly not in my 22 years in the industry. The dollar has lost over 90% of its value in the last 60 years. No fiat currency has ever survived the government printing presses. Ours is not immune. The time is now to be proactive. 1-800-686-2237, extension 116. Anything tied to the dollar is at risk. CDs, annuities, 401ks, IRAs, stocks, bonds, you name it, so decide. Do you want to leave a legacy of wealth or debt for your family? The choice is yours. Call me at 1-800-686-2237, extension 116. That's 1-800-686-2237, extension 116. Be proactive, not reactive. Call 1-800-686-2237, extension 116.
Nutritious food is real body armor. It builds muscle, burns fat, improves digestion, and feeds the entire body the nutrients it needs. Did you know the U.S. government banned the hemp plant from growing in the United States and classified it as a Schedule I drug to hide it behind the marijuana plant? People have been confused about this plant for over 80 years, and many still don't know what hemp is. So now you know hemp is not marijuana, and marijuana is not hemp. They are different varieties of the same species. HempUSA.org wants the world to know these basic facts and to help people understand that hemp protein powder is the best kept health secret you need to know about. Remember, hemp protein powder contains 53% protein, is gluten-free, anti-inflammatory, non-GMO, and is loaded with nutrients. Call 888-910-4367, 888-910-4367, and see what our powder, seeds, and oil can do for you. Only at HempUSA.org.
Digestive health is the key to wellness and elimination of toxins. That bears repeating. Digestive health is the key to wellness and elimination of toxins. And Pro EM1 Daily Probiotic Cleanse is the key to digestive health. Pro EM1 is a powerful liquid probiotic, strong enough to cleanse, gentle enough to use every day. Pro EM1 is dairy, wheat, and soy-free, contains all natural and certified organic ingredients, contains no preservatives or animal products, supports a healthy digestive and immune system, supports weight loss, improves absorption of food nutrients, aids in controlling yeast infections, is never freeze-dried, and uses 3 groups of live, viable, beneficial microbes to cleanse and remove toxins. Order Pro EM1 Daily Probiotic Cleanse at Teraganix.com, spelled Teraganix.com, Teraganix.com, or call toll-free 866-369-3678. That's 866-369-3678. Pro EM1, the raw probiotic.
We'd like to hear from you. If you have a comment or question about the Paracast, send it to news@theparacast.com. That's news@theparacast.com. And don't forget to visit our famous Paracast community forums at forum.theparacast.com.
With Gene and Chris, Walter Bosley joins us. Fascinating here. This Aero Group or Society from California. Any evidence at all that they actually developed something that works or worked?
Before Walter answers that, we must remind our listeners that the first reported events of the 1896-1897 airship wave happened just down the hill from Sonora, outside of Sacramento,
Right.
California. And
Exactly.
there's very interesting correlations there in terms of just sheer geography.
Exactly, and that leads into my initial answer to the question. There is that first of all, you have let's all agree here. You brought up what is the problem with this whole story of the Aero Club. The problem is, where is this technology? How come in World War I and the 20th century, we were dealing with biplanes and Zeppelins, and then in World War II, we're still using propeller-driven aircraft? I mean, what the heck is going on here? That is admittedly part of the problem with the whole idea that there were these guys with this advanced technology.
Of course, that also relates to the common question that if we unearthed alien technology in Roswell because of a UFO crash, where is that technology? But let's go back to the 1890s.
That's a good point. Very good point. Well, but when you look at the Delshau description of these arrows, these are very primitive expressions of the use of this technology. So as it developed, I would point to the 1890s airship mystery itself, just as Chris pointed out, with what looks like an apparent connection to the Sonora Aero Club mystery, because, as Chris said, the first sighting in the 1890s airship mystery was right up the road, in Sacramento. So you could point to the 1890s airship mystery as the first part of the answer to that question. Now, the second part is, where did it develop from there? Well, we have these stories of what the Nazi engineers were doing, messing around with as early as the late 1920s and into the 1930s with the Bell, and the stories of their attempts to do flying saucers and such. And, no matter what you think of that stuff, those stories are there. And Joseph Farrell has done probably one of the very best jobs on analysis of, in his book Roswell and the Right, of what the Germans actually were as a matter of historical record. In fact, what they were developing that would support the idea that this technology, was, emerging, being shared and such. Now, the book, the second Empire of the Wheel book, does not go into that, in any kind of detail. It alludes to it. But the point of all this is, yes, the problem is, if they had it since the 1850s, as early as the 1850s, where is it now? Where has it been? But the potential answer to that is, well, look at the airship mystery. Well, look at these stories of, the early 20th century flying saucers. Well, look at Roswell and ask yourself, what really and who really was that? That's where you might find the answers to that question.
That almost raises the crypto-terrestrial theory, that there is an organization, society, or civilization on Earth that has these advanced aircraft, and they fly them around, but we still don't understand their motives, their purpose, or why they don't let themselves be known, or maybe they are known to governments.
Well, my book goes into that. I get into the second book, Empire of the Wheel 2, Friends from Sonora. It goes into the breakaway civilization as a possible explanation for what was going on with these arrows and these airships, and what was going on as far as they're involved with the 1915 mystery in San Bernardino. And it explains about how, in my personal theory, that the original NIMSA, which was the umbrella organization over all these different aero clubs, which, remember, Delshaw said there were several aero clubs, or more than one aero club, certainly, around various areas of the U.S. And in my research and in my book, I go into the argument that this organization, these groups, divided into two factions. You would have had one faction, based on the evidence, in my analysis of it, that was really committed to the advancement of this technology and what it could have done commercially, so to speak, and then the other one that was more esoterically driven. And by 1915, I argue, theoretically, that these were two distinct factions that were in opposition to each other, but two distinct factions which were essentially factions of a breakaway civilization, so to speak, that had their reasons for keeping this technology to themselves. That's been discussed by authors who are much more knowledgeable about this, than I am, the breakaway civilization, so to speak, and those concepts. But it's an interesting concept that fits really, really well with, what we know allegedly about the airship mystery, the aero clubs, and all that secret technology stuff.
Well, here's the way I'm looking at it also, and that is here, is there any reason whatsoever, granted there's a breakaway civilization, granted that we have different fractions, granted that they've developed advanced aircraft of one type or another, any reason to relate any of that to these killings?
Yes, the book goes into that. As far as the adults are concerned, the book argues that the woman Cora Stanton was actually a government source asset or possibly agent whose work for the government had exposed her to the breakaway civilization network players, and that she was in San Bernardino investigating either on behalf of the government or possibly linked to one of the factions. And she basically, wrong place at the wrong time, learned too much, that kind of thing, and was murdered by an opposition agent. And that two other of the adults the victims were involved in all this. One of them was very possibly murdered by opposition agents. The other one possibly faked his death, because we go into who he might have been and why he would have faked his death. I mean, it really, I'm telling you, there's all sorts of interesting facets to this little jewel that I've uncovered here in San Bernardino. And anyway, as agents involved either with the war and the government, the man who I just mentioned who might have faked his death, if I'm right, my theory is that he was a very wealthy industrialist and very possibly one of the investors in the airship technology that would have, connected him to knowledge of it, and the players and the extent of their technology. And right there might have been a reason for why his life was in danger. So that's the angle that the second book goes into.
We'll try to put more of this together in our next segment. We have Walter Bosley joining Gene and Chris. You're in
the Paracast.
The GCN Radio Network, providing the world with hard-hitting talk radio. GCN. Great talk radio starts here.
Graphic Converter is the image manipulation tool for the rest of us. It does not use any database. You get full control of all your files. Want to view the images of a folder? Drag it into Graphic Converter, and a powerful browser opens up to show your image files. You could use it for slideshows. You could use it to import images from digital cameras or from scanners. Need to do some image editing? You can do that too in Graphic Converter. Also print catalogs. Convert from so many formats, I can't even list them. Download now to see if Graphic Converter is good for you, like 1.5 million other users. Guess what? You could save money when you buy Graphic Converter. Use the coupon code Night Owl. Use the coupon code Night Owl to get a special price for Graphic Converter. Go to lemkesoft.com. That's LEMKE soft.com. lemkesoft.com. LEMKE soft.com.
There are those curious about Bitcoins and those using and making money with Bitcoins. What are Bitcoins? A Bitcoin is the first decentralized currency that can be easily transferred from person to person over the internet. No bank needed. This means lower fees, and accounts can never be frozen, limited, or closed. You are in control of your money. And the best part? You can start earning and making money with Bitcoins right away. No computer or expertise is required to earn money with Bitcoins, and a growing number of merchants now accept Bitcoins. Plus, they're easily exchanged for dollars, euros, and more. Learn more about the easiest, cheapest, most profitable way to enter the Bitcoin market and get paid every 2 weeks by one of the fastest growing Bitcoin miners in the world at cloudhashing.com. Just like it sounds, cloudhashing.com. That's cloudhashing.com. We mine your business.
Great news, pure water lovers. BigBerkeyWaterFilters.com has a special discount offer for all GCN listeners. You can't do better than a Big Berkey for economy. For only 1.7 cents a gallon, a single set of filters can last for 5 to 10 years. There's none better than a Big Berkey for emergency preparedness as a backup water source. And you just can't beat a Big Berkey to remove dangerous chlorine, all types of fluoride, pathogenic bacteria, cysts, parasites, and unhealthy byproducts from municipal water. Berkey water filter systems are even powerful enough to purify stagnant pond water. For the gold standard in water filters, get a Big Berkey at BigBerkeyWaterFilters.com. And all GCN listeners get 5% off all ceramic filter systems. For details, call 1-877-99-BERKEY. That's 877-99-BERKEY. Big Berkey Water Filters, for the love of clean water.
These days, so many suffer from heartburn, stomach ulcers, and acid reflux, and most never realize it is the high acidity within the body that causes their discomfort. While selective diet choices can help, AlkaVision Plasma pH drops can really make a change. A few drops added to water can optimize your body's pH level, ridding you of harmful waste and acid, promoting health and restoring vibrance and energy. Healthy pH levels make all the difference. High acidity can also cause depression, insomnia, and irritability. AlkaVision Plasma pH drops bring you vital balance that can be truly life-changing. Alkalizing boosts immune response, reduces headaches and cramping, and even helps prevent bone loss. This is simple science that helps your body do what's natural. Order your AlkaVision pH drops for just $29.95 at alkavision.com, ALKAvision.com, or call 800-518-7615. Alkalize your body. Supercharge your health at alkavision.com.
Hello, this is Rosemary Ellen Guiley, and you're listening to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio.
This sounds like a movie, Walter Bosley.
Oh, that'd be nice.
Speaking of movies, one of the more compelling things that you bring into this whole interesting brew is Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. You want to give us the lowdown on how they actually were brought into this whole scenario, sort of peripherally?
No, absolutely. Wow. This was the doozy for me, to be honest. This was the biggie for me. Basically, you have this German association in this milieu of these guys in the American West, and it's kind of hard to do in a nutshell, to be honest. It really started with Cora Stanton. Here I had this mystery woman who nobody knew who she was, and the identity of Cora Stanton, the first book goes into in great detail. Rick and I are convinced that was not her real name. That was a false identity, and the first book explains why, as I said, in great detail. So we come away convinced that these woman, so-called Cora Stanton, that was not her true identity. She shows up in town. Nobody knows her. You know, she turns up dead. The only people to see her alive are is a receptionist in a doctor's office that she went into the afternoon of the night she died. And after she dies, she's found floating in a lake. It's later discovered by the medical examiner that she's got poison, bichloride of mercury. Interesting that the only poison victim in this whole mystery, out of 4 poison victims, they were able to identify the poison in her system because it was a well-known substance, chemical back then, and poisonous chemical. But nobody knows who she is. I mean, hundreds of people, a few thousand people were kind of paraded through according to the news report, through the mortuary that was serving as the morgue in this case, and nobody knew who she was. Her name was unknown for going on like 11 days. It was all over the newspaper, who is this woman? If anyone knows who she is, and, please come identify her. Only a physical description was given. And then, like I said, 11 days after she's found dead, somebody stumbles upon a purse, a hat, and a suicide note. And in this suicide note is the name Cora Stanton. And that was the first time and the only thing that ever identified this woman as Cora Stanton. Well, within an hour or so of this purse and note being found, a man walks into the mortuary claiming that he knows Cora Stanton, known her for a long time, knew her in Iowa, and before she went to El Paso, Texas, like the letter states she's from El Paso. And when he's shown the body, allegedly he doesn't recognize it, and then before the police can get there to question him, he disappears. The name he gives, the leads followed on it turn up nothing. Where he says he lived and where he says he worked, nobody there knows him, and he himself becomes a mystery. So, I'm wondering, well, what the heck is going on with this? And, who is this woman? And, it was left this big mystery. I might add that she was 35 years old and found to be a virgin. And, so this whole thing is very strange. So I go back to do the second book, and I'm jumping back in to look at my information and sources on missing persons at the time. I was actually going back to look deeper into O.H. Bailey, the first victim, who I mentioned before, and it's in the first book. And I happened to come across a name, a historical figure that I never knew was considered a missing person. And so I thought, wow, I wonder. So I looked at this famous woman's physical description, and I kind of got, those investigators' intuitive goosebumps. And the deeper I looked into it, the more interesting things I found, and it basically led to my theory, which is presented in the book to the extent that I can support it. My theory that the true identity of Cora Stanton was Etta Place, the associate of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, who, by the way, returned from South America before Butch and Sundance allegedly were killed, and who disappeared in 1909. And so I thought, gosh, could it be? The physical descriptions are nearly exact. Etta disappeared in 1909. Cora, no one knows anything about her. I began to look into could Etta Place have been working as some type of law enforcement source against, on Butch and Sundance and their circles. And the book, EOW2, Empire of the Wheel 2, goes into all this. And it is my position presently that Etta Place is actually buried here in San Bernardino under the name Cora Stanton. And again, the book explains all that. Now, how does that tie in to all this airship mystery and all this strange stuff? Well, Butch and Sundance went down to South America, as we know. But what I didn't know was all the interesting things that went on between them and E.H. Harriman, the head of the Union Pacific Railroad, and his association to German bankers.
Oh, silence.
I don't know, Walter. It kind of sounds a little bit tenuous. You are kind of jumping around here, and obviously The book goes into much more greater detail. But
it's tenuous here in a conversation that I got to fit it into a couple of minutes. But I guarantee you, in the book, there's a little bit more detail, presented to back it up. I mean, am I absolutely certain? Do I have a smoking gun, so to speak? No. However, as I said, that's kind of what the book is for, the details. But I thought, wow, Butch and Sundance, Butch Cassidy allegedly we know, not allegedly, we know that he had gone to the governor of Utah to discuss amnesty for his crimes, and the governor of Utah said, well, you're going to have to go to the E.H. Harriman, the head of the Union Pacific Railroad. He's the one that's going to have to drop the charges. So we're told that a man who went to a governor of a state keenly interested in amnesty, we're told that after he's told that all he's got to do is go to the railroad guy, history tells us that he just gave up on that and just kept up his life of crime. Well, when you look closely at the details, you find out that E.H. Harriman himself made an overture to Butch through a mutual associate that he would like to discuss with Butch's amnesty. Of course, we're told that Butch, who already asked for amnesty, was suddenly not interested in that, and we're told that he never met with E.H. Harriman. But the funny thing is, after E.H. Harriman expressed this interest, as well as Butch had, Butch and his gang robbed a Union Pacific asset only one more time after that. And then shortly after that, Butch and Sundance, the members of their gang, which had always been able to flee and escape law enforcement, were suddenly getting caught. And Butch and Sundance were never involved in the shootings of law enforcement. They had never. Here's the interesting thing. Butch Cassidy and Harry Longabaugh, the Sundance Kid, were never known to have killed anyone. And yet Harry Longabaugh was well known to be quite a marksman. What kind of marksman do we have hanging out with bad guys who were shooting at people and stuff, who himself never gets involved with killing somebody? Well, we could argue that a law enforcement agent or undercover asset might explain that. And the book goes into why I suspect that Harry Longabaugh himself may have been an asset for law enforcement.
Instead of being an hour and 45-minute movie, we've gone into a 4-hour or possibly 2-part movie here because it's getting so intricate. We've got airships, we have serial killers, we have Germans, we have spies, we have Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. The mind is boggling. And people long ago said that my mind was somehow boggled for one reason or another that we won't mention on the air. But we're not going to be boggling anymore here, except to say that we have Walter Bosley back for one more segment with Gene and Chris. You're in the Paracast.
America's #1 source for independent talk radio for over a decade. We are the GCN Radio Network.
If you want to get your website online and you need reliable service, first-class service at the lowest possible price, there's only one place to go. Well, DreamHost has a special promotion with our show where they'll offer you unlimited disk space, unlimited bandwidth, one-click web apps such as WordPress, 24/7 support. You can save over $55. You want to know how? Go to dreamhost.com/radio, dreamhost.com/radio. Whether it's personal mail, whether it's business email, you want reliable, dependable delivery, freedom from spam, freedom from viruses. Well, Polaris Mail offers professional email hosting services for your personal or small business use. Each account uses 25 gigabytes of storage, an easy-to-use webmail interface, and full mobile sync. Sign up today for a 30-day free trial at polarismail.com, polarismail.com.
Is your dream more time, more money, or better health? Stop by our longevity booth at the Minnesota State Fair and say hello to the GCN team reps and get your healthy energy drink on the way to the fair. Sign up for door prizes and find out about our amazing home-based business opportunity as featured in Success Magazine, located near the main entry to the State Fair off Snelling and Dan Patch Avenue at 1366 Snelling Avenue North, or call 651-261-2040.
You know about RVs, you've heard about bunkers, but surviving is not recreation, and man wasn't made to live underground. Introducing Survivalist Camps, the ultimate fully functional off-the-grid survival bug-out house that's mobile, well-equipped, and custom-built to outlast any other RV or trailer. Go to survivalistcamps.com to learn more. That's survivalistcamps.com, providing your basic needs to survive. Survivalistcamps.com.
It's hurricane and wildfire season again. Why do thousands of people sit in these reoccurring problem areas year after year, betting their lives that the disaster won't get them? Hundreds of you helped eFoods Direct ship 50,000 donated meals to the Oklahoma victims. The problem is we can't help everybody. If every one of us who can will take care of ourselves, we can all pitch in to take care of those who really can't. The new Just In Case pack from eFoods Direct is the big brother to the 7-day emergency pack designed for Oklahoma disaster donations. It contains a 2-month supply for one person, or a 1-month supply for 2 adults, or a 2-week supply for a family of 4. The $320 price is $50 less than retail. Call 800-409-5633 on the web efoodsdirect.com/Alex. Order 2 or more, get 10% off, free shipping applies. Call 800-409-5633 on the web efoodsdirect.com/Alex.
Ouch! My back is out again.
Hi, Dr. Ortman with Wellspring Spinal Care. If you're experiencing neck, mid, or lower back pain, this information is for you. One of the complaints that I hear is patients receive their typical adjustment, only having to repeat them as the pain returns. Putting the bones back in place is only half of the battle. At Wellspring Spinal Care, we have the entire solution. We use the NUCA approach, utilizing 3-dimensional x-rays and gentle touch technology to deliver specific correction. We then design a custom nutritional supplement program which provides essential nutrients targeting the areas of concern. With a NUCA approach and proper nutrition, you'll be on your way to a faster and more permanent recovery. To get you on the road to wellness, visit drortman.com. That's drortman.com. Or call us today, 952-303-9124. That's 952-303-9124. Wellspring Spinal Care, chiropractic done right.
This is Jacques Vallée. You're listening to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio.
Now, I have to tell you that we did put up a question bank thread in our forums at forum.theparacast.com that has lots of questions. A lot of it is stuff that Walter has already answered in our forum, so you can go for the answers there. And we don't have time to repeat any of that stuff because we're just getting started and we're almost at the end of the show. So with all of these disparate elements working together, I mean, is it possible that it's all coincidence and we have a separate set of murders, we have separate airships, we have Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid? Is it all just a crazy coincidence? How do you put it together and say there's more to it?
Well, it could all be just, unconnected. A whole bunch of it could just be flat out, my theories could be wrong. My analysis could be wrong on some stuff. I mean, maybe none of it happened the way I'm proposing that it possibly happened. I will tell you, if you were to ask me, what are you the most certain of out of all this stuff? I'll tell you, I am, and remember, I'm saying most, not 100%, okay? But I am most confident with a couple of things. Number one, that Cora Stanton was at a place. And the other thing is that the Zodiac Killer was indeed killing people in association with the energy grid. But to stick with what we were just talking about, it could all be not the way I'm seeing it. But what's intriguing is, and others who have looked at it have said, wow, what's intriguing is the preponderance of circumstances and possible evidence that it is, or something very close to how I've analyzed it and Rick and I presented it, it is the case. But, could I be wrong? Yeah, any of us could be wrong with any of our research. We could be, but part of looking into these things is the fact that there are strange, intriguing circumstances and facts that, it's kind of fun to try to put these things together. And, we could all be wrong with anything. Who knows? I really, the way I present it is, hey, here's this bunch of weird stuff that I found. Here's these strange possible connections. And, here's what I think is possible. I leave it to the reader. What do you think? I don't get into debating things. I am not trying to convince anybody of anything. Not on the hard sell anyway. I just, I present it and think what you will. That's honestly my approach.
Well, that's a really good place for me to branch off here and ask a question by Burnt State, who's one of our active posters at forum.theparacast.com. And one of his questions is how would you describe the type of writing and research you complete? You often connect together very disparate pieces of research, which then get translated, reinterpreted, connected to a form very complex, like a complex historical tapestry. So he wonders, would you describe yourself as a revisionist historian, a speculator of alternative historical realities, a connoisseur of the unusual? How would you describe your writing and research?
I've never really thought of what I'm doing or myself in terms of labels, and not that there's particularly necessarily anything wrong with a label. I'm just honestly, I hadn't thought about that. These books, because they're not really, the books aren't about me and my experiences. So my focus hasn't been on, how would I describe what I'm doing here? I'm just doing it, if that makes sense. I don't know if revisionist, historian would be accurate. I would look at it more as maybe filling in curious blanks, maybe finding the strange little bits that fill in the holes and blanks. So it doesn't so much as revise as maybe helps, tune in better a picture. But I do realize that, what I'm looking at, my theories and what Rick and I, present, we realize what realm it's in. And that's why we try to present, especially with the first book, we say repeatedly, you do not have to agree with these, with the idea of the energy line and killing somebody on an energy line will do something magical. What we're saying is that we think the perpetrators, if these were murders, might have believed in that. Now, the second book, you have to kind of be open to the premise, the possibility that there were these airships and these aeroplanes. If you're just not open to it, if you just can't accept the notion, then you probably are wasting your time reading my book.